And really, to me, it's like when you buy a house, you're in the dark, you're relying on the good word of a lot of people and you have nothing on your side to help you out. Now, you can go try to dig up information across the interweb and spend 20 or 30 hours researching. We try to eliminate all that and say we do the hard work of lifting all the data and putting it all together. So when you walk in, you have a pregame analysis of the house.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor! 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 Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Alex Schloe, and I am so excited that you're here today learning how real estate and entrepreneurship can give you the freedom that you need, the freedom that you deserve. Today's episode was unique. It was an incredible episode with Bob Frady, who is a serial entrepreneur who's made a career out of using data to develop smarter answers to difficult questions. When Bob was looking for a new house, he was searching for a comprehensive home history report, and it turns out that there wasn't one. So he built one. Is the CEO and co-founder of Property Lens, which is the most comprehensive tool available to property buyers to help them uncover the hidden risk of a home before they make the most expensive decision of their lives. Bob described this as the Carfax for a home. It's a great place where you can get a ton of data and resources. He showed me one of the reports that they generate through Property Lens. It's like 30 pages of comprehensive information talking about when was the roof replaced, when should you consider replacing the roof, how much would it cost you, the HVAC system, the electrical panel, all these sorts of things. So you can walk in empowered to this transaction. And it's just another key data point, risk mitigation tool, and a way that you can negotiate with the seller. Prior to Property Lens, Bob was the CEO and co-founder of HazardHub, which is a risk data company that was acquired by Guidewire in August of 2021. This was a really cool episode where we were talking about building and scaling businesses, hiring the right people, and what you should look for in a home and how you can use Property Lens to mitigate a lot of that risk and help you get a better deal on your first or next investment property. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's episode with Bob Frady. Bob Frady, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today. Thanks for calling in all the way from Minnesota and for staying up late to record this episode. How are things going?
Alex, I can't complain. Any better, and they'd have to clone me. So
it sounds good. That's great. We were talking a bit about the weather here in Colorado Springs, how it's going to be snowing tonight, and it was 72 degrees. So I just wanted to document that for folks listening. It's April 17th, and we're recording. So we're getting all four seasons here, and I'm sure in Minnesota, you're probably experiencing the same.
Oh, it was 70 degrees and a big thunderstorm came through, and it's going to be down in the 40s tonight. So yeah.
Sounds about right.
Typical spring weather in Minnesota.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Well, Bob, for folks who don't know who you are, do you mind telling them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am the CEO and co-founder of Property Lens. To explain it very simply, Property Lens is like a Carfax for a house, where we pull together a ton of data, some of which we build and some of which we get from partners, to help home buyers understand exactly what they're walking into when they're buying a house. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. We'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks for your time. Just good. That's awesome, Bob. Well, I'm really excited to dive into Property Lens. But before we do that, let's take a step back. Let's talk a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship. Yeah. I know you're a serial entrepreneur and you've had multiple different businesses. So take us back to where all that began.
Sure. I grew up in Boston and ended up getting a job with a company called National Decision Systems way back when, which is ironically where I met my co-founder back in 1989. And we were involved in data. So geospatial data is like not only what's here, but what's around here. My whole career has been working with data. And then I always ended up in these positions where I would just get on fire about an idea. And inside of a big corporate sometimes, that's not necessarily the best. It's not good to be on fire about anything inside of a big corporate. And so I would keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing and keep expanding and want to do more and more things. And they would finally go, there's an exit sign over there with your name on it. So I ended up getting fired a few times. Finally, I was like, I'm tired of innovating for folks who don't want to innovate. So going to do it myself. And I did it once back in the 90s with some friends. We built a consulting business and it worked out pretty good, but it kind of turned me off to it for a while. And then about 10 years ago, my friend from National Decision Systems, who I'd been friends with forever, said, hey, we've had this idea for a long time. We know how to do it. Let's do it. We did. And I'm like, I'm tired of working for other people. It's like, it's not bad. It's just, I have that kind of mind that just races ahead and says, what's next? What's next? What's next? And too many people are satisfied with what is. And if you're a what's next guy in a what is world, you're gonna be hurting. So I just built a what's next world and built my own world. And there you go.
That's awesome. Yeah, it can be tough for that entrepreneurial mind. I feel that too with the, kind of restraints in healthcare and some restraints in the military. It makes it hard to innovate, especially, you keep getting the answers like, well, this is how we've always done it. It's like, well, it'd be a great time to change, and so I know folks can definitely relate to this. So it sounds like after that first company, the consulting company, then you created HazardHub, and that was a risk data company, correct?
Yep. It started out because my former mother-in-law had a house near a river and she wasn't in a flood zone, but she was right next to it. And nobody ever told her because they didn't have to. And then the river did its thing. It flooded and she ended up losing about $30,000 of stuff in the house. She didn't know. Simple things like don't put stuff in the basement that's really valuable because that floods first. And so I was pretty good at data at that point. My business partners and I were good at data. And we thought, well, how can we build this in a way that people aren't doing it? So we connected it to APIs. We built our own models, and it would be things like flood and wildfire and wind and hail and tornado. I'm sure you're familiar with hail being from Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
And ended up just selling it. We knew our competitors were bad at partnership sales, so that's where we focused. And got more and more partners, kept growing the business. We bootstrapped the business. And then in 2018, the market was very frothy. Somebody came along, 7 different people came along and said, are you for sale? And finally we said, sure, might as well take some chips off the table. And we ended up selling it in 2021 to Guidewire Software, which is a big insurance software company in the property casualty space. And it was great. There were 10 of us on the cap table, and we ended up buying a very nice house in Edina after the fact. So
that's awesome.
It was good. It was like, when you start a business, you have to decide, what do you want to be? Somebody asked me, they're like, would you rather own 10% of a $100 million company or 100% of a $10 million company? At that time, hadn't had a successful exit. So I said, I want to own 100% of a $10 million company. And they're like, well, don't raise any money because that's the easiest way to give away your ownership. We bootstrapped that business and, worked different jobs and all on the side. And then finally, when we got enough revenue, I came on and then we built the whole team after that. So we knew when we built it that here's an exit price. If somebody hits this, then we're out. And it's like a real estate investment. If you just want to play sit and hold forever and ever and ever, you can. But let's say you want to make an IRR of 20%, certain investments just got to go in order to get that rate of return. So when you start a business, that's super critical. It's like, what do you want this business to be? How long do you want to run it? How much do you think it's worth? And all of those questions went into structuring HazardHub in a particular way. Property Lens, on the other hand, we think is a much larger opportunity. So we wanted to own 10% of a $100 million business this time around. So we're structuring it very differently. We've raised some venture capital and a different animal this time. So even though I'm an entrepreneur, it's almost all new because I hadn't done the venture capital thing before and have to learn on the fly as to how to handle all that stuff. And it's a doozy, that's for sure. It's really different when you raise money versus when you bootstrap.
Yeah, I can't imagine, especially something to that scale. And I agree with you. I think the right answer is 10% of a $100 million company. And that it definitely takes a lot to figure out, what you want. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you guys decided like, hey, we're going to build this business with the end in mind. We hit this strike price basically, and we're going to sell this business. And it worked out great for you. Were there any tips or tricks that you learned bootstrapping the business, or any things maybe you would have done differently? There's a lot of folks who are listening to the podcast who are just getting started in their journey. They're looking for like, hey, maybe what do you look for in a partner that you found to be beneficial, or who is your first hire, those sorts of things? What recommendations would you have there, Bob?
I have a business partner who's the same business partner at both HazardHub and Property Lens, and I would not start a business without him because, the thing is nobody really does everything well. Like there may be some people who can. They're rare. If you can't handle certain things or you hate doing certain things, then hire somebody who likes doing those things. So the way we've divided up is I love doing product. I love marketing. I love talking on podcasts, all that fun stuff. He hates it, but he likes doing a lot of the operational work. He ironically likes doing the sales work. So we split that very clearly, still work together on the big decisions, but we have cycles of influence, if you will, or circles of influence that this is primarily mine, that's primarily his. And when it comes down to making a key decision inside of those circles, I make these, he makes those, and it works out really well. Plus you just need somebody to talk to. It's lonely sometimes when you start a business because nobody understands. But if you have a good business partner, they're in it with you. They understand.
Agreed. Yeah, I have two amazing business partners and we all have complementary skill sets. It's kind of like a Venn diagram of there's definitely things we all like. Like we're investing largely in residential assisted living. We all love assisted living, believe in it, believe in the model, understand the potential for it. But Charlie's an Air Force engineer. He's amazing at the systems and building out the automations.
Yep.
He probably knows what API is. I don't. I was going to ask you what that means, but I'm sure he does. And, Luke is a Navy officer and he's really good with, acquisitions and talking with people and building relationships. And we just all complement each other really well. And so I think that's a really important thing to look for in a partnership. And the other thing I was thinking about is, if you're sitting here and you're thinking about getting started, there's really kind of two ways to find that partner. And that may be paying to play. So that's joining a mastermind, joining a community, getting in the room with the right people to try and find a partner, or seeking to serve. That's finding someone who you think would be a good partner who's maybe a couple steps above you and figuring out, okay, what value can I provide them completely free and see if I can take something off their plate and take more off their plate and keep providing value until maybe they open up and bring me into their circle. So those are the two ways to do it. And that can be really helpful to find a good partner, a good partnership to be formed.
One thing that I found very helpful was pitch events where you go and pitch angel investors or investors about your business, but you're not really there to get their money. You're there to say things like, I'm looking for a co-founder, and they're going to know people who you might not know if that's the kind of business that you want to build. So use events like that because number one, it sharpens what you're talking about. And number two, it's a network connection. Or if you don't have that person already in your network, you want to find people who've had a successful experience with somebody who is going to potentially be your co-founder. So how did you find your co-founders?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Charlie was an Air Force engineer. We were both stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. He actually messaged me, or I messaged him on Pockets, the forums. We were talking on the forums. We messaged, realized we were in the same place, got together, and now one of my best friends. And, obviously we've bought a lot of real estate together, started in short-term rentals, now assisted living. And Charlie had the dream and the vision of, hey, I want to supplement my Air Force income, replace my Air Force income with real estate investing and as a realtor. And he did 6 figures part-time as a realtor. And he was like, hey, I want to walk my daughter to school every day. That's what's important to me. And so he hit that point, punched out, got out of the Air Force. And then Luke, Charlie, and I are all in a mastermind program called the War Room Mastermind for active duty military retirees or dependents. Active duty military and retirees and veterans. And so we met there about 4 or 5 years ago. And that's the power of community. And so Luke and I were in the same squad. And every Tuesday night we would meet and we'd put someone on the hot seat. We'd just analyze a deal and just grill them on whatever it was. And Luke came on the hot seat one day and he was like, hey, I want to start investing in assisted living. And here's why. And he laid it out. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do this lease to operator model where I buy the real estate, lease it out to an operator. It's going to cash flow $3,000 to $4,000 per month pretty passively. Once I get a good operator, I'm going for it. And the man of action that he is, probably 6 weeks later, he came back. He's like, I'm under contract. And he bought his property, his first home. And then he's like, Alex, you should come do this with me. And then we brought Charlie in and now we have 5 in Arizona and then 3 others in Wisconsin, and we built a mastermind program and all kinds of stuff together. And we're just continuing to grow and scale that business. But we all are very like-minded in terms of family is everything to us, spending time with family, building that freedom. We want to do what we want, when we want, with who we want. And for me, it's like, hey, I want to practice medicine how I want to, and I want to live life how I want to. And that's what this podcast is all about. So it's been really cool. And I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for that mastermind, if it wasn't for Charlie and Luke. And I'll always be grateful for them. And I'm at the point now where I'm separating from the Air Force and I have that freedom and flexibility. And it's just really cool to see.
You bring up a really interesting point. When we started the business, the company that John and I had met at years ago was the best company either one of us had worked for. And we said, we want a company like that. Very family and community oriented, not family as a team, because it really still is a job. But in terms of, we want you to connect with your families. We don't want to grind you into the dust. And so we built a company in the vision of what we wanted. And what that meant is that if we didn't like you as a customer, we just didn't do business with you. And if we didn't like you as a person, then we wouldn't hire you. And it's not about necessarily being buddies, but it can be pretty tense sometimes in a business. And you have to know that people who you're talking to and working with are good people, and that's kind of the blessing of the business is hire good people. And that's the fun part. Yeah. One of the fun parts for me.
Yeah. I agree.
You get to do what you want. And that's the coolest thing. Get to build what you want.
Yeah. With my best friends. It's awesome to be able to do that. And our families are really close. We do a ski trip every year together and bring all the families together. And, any chance we can all hang out. They're in Virginia right now. I'm in Colorado. We're trying to recruit Luke to move out here to Colorado Springs. So hopefully he's listening to this and he does. But yeah, so it's just awesome to be able to build something great with people that you really care about, with a like-minded goal and mission. And it's even cooler when that mission can really impact others. And so we love that. We love the opportunity. But yeah, thanks, Bob, for reflecting on that. And I wanted to hit on the hiring piece that you mentioned. Sure. I found, and I'm interested to know your thoughts, that hiring should be like 90% for culture, 10% for skill. You can teach the skill, but if they don't fit that company culture, that's not something you want to hire. Is that something that you've experienced as well?
Well, I would say it's probably more 70-30, because sometimes, especially in technical roles, you rely on that skill. And the hardest part that we have with that is we expect our folks to make mistakes. It's like, if you're not trying and making mistakes, then you're not trying hard enough. And now if you repeat those mistakes, that's one thing. But that's a culture that most people, it turns out, are kind of terrified by, because like all through school, if you get the wrong answer, you get punished. If you mess up with your parents, you get punished. And so when you mess up at work, you think, well, I should get punished. And we're like, no, that's kind of cool what you did. It's like, we wasted some time, but that's okay. We learned something. So trying to find a match to that mentality is really hard. And teaching people to let go of their experience that is always so punitive when they make a mistake is hard. And that's the one thing that I would reflect on when we started the business, is we took it for granted that people would love this. They would just flourish in it. But it took a long time for people to become comfortable enough to admit that they were wrong about something. And I'm like, I don't care. Let's just fix it and move on. And don't do it again. But let's not do it. Let's not worry about the fact that we had a problem. Nothing is so fatal, luckily so far, that would kill the business. It's like, if you're going to make a mistake like that, then you want to put a little fence around it so you can contain it. So part evolves. We thought everybody would love this culture. And what we found is that we have to teach people this culture. So there is, and then they'll have to rely on their technical skill until they realize this part of the culture. So it is incredibly important to find the people who can thrive in the type of environment that you want. And listen, you may be a drill sergeant type of a business, and great, fine. If that works for you, that works for you. You got to understand that you have to hire people who thrive in that sort of environment, and people who are more like, okay, I'm going to show up at noon today and then work until midnight. I'm like, I don't care. Just do your job, just get it done. When it comes down to hiring, to sort of try to bring that back, we got the gray hair, so we know a few people, and we used our network to find people. The first time, it was all networked. Like, I knew this guy, he knew that guy, we got together, and then we knew these guys and we brought them in. When you start to get outside of your network is where it gets a little bit trickier. And we made some mistakes in some of those hires, and that's okay. You make mistakes, and And sometimes it's just not a good fit. But for the most part, I think we've done pretty good in hiring because we finally figured out, here's what you're walking into. And a lot of times when you start a business, you just assume that everybody's going to get it. They don't. You got to walk them through it. And that's the part that has taken a little bit of learning on our part to really bring in people who are just comfortable with living on the edge. And if you make a mistake, it's okay. Well, it's like rappelling a rock. We got a rope on you, and the rope's not going to. It might be a little painful, but the rope's not going to collapse. So it's a tough. Hiring's tough. It's a tough one. And if you make a mistake, correct it early.
Yeah.
And better for everybody. But I like to invest in people. I don't like to be capricious with people's lives. I've had that done to me, where some new boss comes in and he doesn't like your face and then you're out. That has happened. And I don't like that. I don't want to be that kind of person. So we really try to invest in our people. But there are times when it's like, that wasn't such a good thing.
Yeah.
And we call it the walk around the park, where we take people up and say, hey, listen, it's not you, it's not us, it's just us together. And it doesn't work. So it's always hard to do that. But yeah, hire people who you want to do business with and who you like being around, because it's better than people who you don't like being around.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm glad we were able to hit on that. I wanted to know HazardHub. So a lot of risk mitigation and stuff you were looking at through that company. Was there anything that was really surprising to you that maybe wasn't being put out there, like you mentioned, with the property being close to the river and it wasn't in a flood zone, so they didn't say anything? Were there any other things you learned from a risk mitigation perspective that would be helpful for folks who are investing in real estate, or helpful to look at when they're purchasing a property?
I think the surprising thing to me was how people view insurance companies and how insurance companies view people are two different things. Like, people view insurance company like, I've been paying you for 15 years in this property, and all of a sudden you cut me. Where's the love? Where's our relationship? And it's not like that in the mind of the insurance company. It's a year-to-year relationship. You are a potential cost. So what the insurance company has to do is try to mitigate that cost. Like, we're seeing it now, and this is not a HazardHub thing. This is more of a property lens thing. If your roof is more than 10 years old, you might have trouble getting insurance, because insurance companies have cut way back on insuring older roofs because they cause so many problems. And people are like, what do you mean you raised my premium 40%? And so, well, your roof is now 10 years old, so time for a replacement. Even though it'll last a long time, they've become much more cautious. And I think that largely they view you as a customer, not necessarily as you view them as a partner. For example, you own five facilities now, is it? Or
yeah, 5.
Facilities?
Yeah, 5 to 8. Yeah, we'll just put it, we have 8, but yeah.
So you have a group policy for all of them, or do you have different policies for different states?
Yeah, different states.
Okay. So you think that, okay, we've got 5 policies. We pay a lot of premium on these policies. We're partners, right? And the insurance company's like, no, you're a potential expense.
Yeah, for sure.
It's super, super frustrating. So we would sell this risk data, to insurance companies, and they would use it to evaluate a property and then not share it with their customers. I'm like, wait a second, that they're the ones who can do the most about it. Like, if you know what the risks are at a property, chances are you're going to be able to take proactive steps to guard against those losses, because nobody wants a claim and they don't share it with you. And that kills me. And I thought, with Property Lens, well, we'll give you the same data that insurance companies are looking at, and with the same data that the banks are looking at when they're evaluating your property, and put it in your hands so you know exactly what they're looking at.
That's awesome. So it sounds like Property Lens was kind of born out of HazardHub and the frustrations that came with insurance companies guarding that data, guarding that information. I want to learn more about how Property Lens came to be, but I do want to ask what API was, because it's actually driving me crazy to not know what API was earlier.
It's an application programming interface.
Okay.
So it's a series of code. You'll say, give me this data for this location in our case, and it's structured in a code. You send out the API request, and then we send you back a whole bunch of data. And basically that's what an API is. It's a simplified way to retrieve data from somewhere else.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you. So now I'll get that question right at trivia when we go next time. So thanks, Bob. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about Property Lens. So give us the story behind Property Lens. We kind of hit on a little bit of how that came to be, but if there's any more in terms of the origin of Property Lens, I'd love to hear that story and the journey with that as well.
So, when you sell your company, they say don't do anything rash. And so we bought a house in Edina, Minnesota. It was far away from our house in California, but we were a little bit familiar with the area. And I knew a bunch of stuff from my HazardHub data. And I had a bunch of friends in other pieces of the business who would give me data to help evaluate the house. Like, this place has a radon issue, not disclosed. So I had a radon test done here. It turns out it's elevated risk of radon. And I said, you got to put a remediation system in before we'll buy the house. There's a risk of hail in Minnesota, rapidly rising insurance rates in Minnesota because of hail. And there's a creek that runs out by here that also gets a little ill-behaved sometimes and has not respected the flood zones. So I knew, and there was also an ice dam, and none of this was disclosed. And not because people were trying to do a bad thing, but it just didn't occur to them to disclose it. I walked in and they wanted a pretty good chunk of money for the house. And I said, I'll give you 10% less than that. They took it. And because I knew I was going to have to put that kind of repairs into the place to make sure I was guarding against it. And I looked around to say, is there like a Carfax for houses? And it turns out there wasn't one. And I'm like, if I think it's valuable, maybe I'll make some drawings and show it to some people and see what they think. So we did. And everyone was like, this is great. Wish I had it when I bought my house. And so I tried to retire. I went to the golf course. I went to the Best Buy. I sat in the parking lot of the Best Buy and I'm like, I'm bored. So started another business. And maybe boredom wouldn't have been so bad, but I just like solving problems and helping people. And really, to me, it's like when you buy a house, you're in the dark, you're relying on the good word of a lot of people and you have nothing on your side to help you out. Now you can go try to dig up information across the interweb and spend 20 or 30 hours researching. We try to eliminate all that and say, we do the hard work of lifting all the data and putting it all together. So when you walk in, you have a pregame analysis of the house. And, as a physician, it's funny. I first started in sales. We had sales training and the motto was diagnose before you prescribe. It's like, you wouldn't walk into your doctor's office and say, I had a sniffle last night and then have the doctor go, well, you got cancer. That's a terrible, terrible way to do it. And that's kind of what happens in housing. You are buying someplace that might be far away from where you are. So you don't know what all the surrounding danger is like. You don't know the permits that have been pulled. You don't know what the roof condition is. We give you that information. So when you walk in the door, you're prepared. Now you still might buy it anyway. I bought this house anyway, even with all the issues, because I knew that at the price I got it, I was happy. That's what we try to do to every home buyer. So before you even walk in the door, you have an idea of what's going on in that house. Because if you wait until you make an offer and you put your earnest money up and then you get an inspection and then you find out all the stuff that's wrong, it's painful at that point to go through a negotiation when you can handle most of that stuff up front.
That's great. Yeah. Well, it's a great risk mitigation tool. And it's also a negotiation tool for sure. As you already mentioned, like, hey, I know that there's these problems here. I need 10% off the purchase price. And you can share, I'm sure you could share the property lens report with them and say, hey, look, this is what I'm seeing. This is why I need that. And it's a great piece to help negotiate off the price. Bob, what is the data that Property Lens is pulling, or what could you expect if you went to get a report through you guys?
Well, there's a couple of ways to find that out. The first is that you can go onto the website at propertylens.com and there's a sample report. You can take a look for yourself. It'll show you exactly what's in there. But we pull from about 45 different sources. We do it dynamically, again, through APIs where you type it in we run out, like 1,000 bees run out and then bring back all the data. We assemble it. We run it through some rules. We run it through some AI and give you the things you should be looking out for at a house. So we'll give you the roof age. We'll give you the roof condition. We'll tell you the last time it was replaced and the systems were replaced, assuming it was permitted. We'll tell you if there's sex offenders around the house. We'll tell you if it's near a flood zone. We'll tell you if it's near a Superfund site, which is now a forced disclosure in some states. We'll tell you the estimated electricity consumption. We'll tell you as much as we can, and then we'll tell you all the perils. Like, is it subjected to hurricanes? Is it subjected to tornadoes, to hail, to all of those things? Because like even hail, what can you do? It's like, well, you can put a hail resistant roof on a house. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but it'll save you a big hole in your roof from hail if you know about it ahead of time. And then we read all the listing information. We read all of the permit information. We read all the real estate information. And we use that to say, Okay, the HVAC was replaced 2 years ago. That's great. You don't got to worry about it. The roof is 17 years old on a 21-year life cycle. So you're probably going to, at some point, need to replace this. And here's an estimated cost to replace it. So we try to tell you, and we think about it as home buyers because we've bought a lot of houses. Like, what would I want to know before I walked in the door? Like, I can't tell you whether the windows have been replaced or not because it's not a permitted event. And, that's something that you're going to need to find out from the homeowner. I can tell you if the HVAC system has been upgraded. I can tell you whether the electrical panel is old. There's all sorts of stuff that I can tell you.
That's awesome.
Or we can tell you.
I'm assuming septic, would that be something that you could typically pull?
Yeah. That's a perfect example. Like, I had someone smart enough to ask me this question when I sold a house in California, 100-foot sewer line from the house to the street. Someone, the buyer of my house, waited till the very last minute and said, I want a sewer inspection. I'm like, so we get the roto-rooter guy and he runs it down and there's a crack in the sewer pipe and there's roots coming through the sewer. So I ended up giving him a credit because I didn't want to fix it. And he was smart. He saved $1,500 off the price of that house because he knew to ask. Do that to say the sewer line is this old, you should get an inspection. That's the kind of thing, or at least ask about any issues that you had with that sewer line so you don't run into that issue. Because if they answer, the realtor has to answer as honestly as they can. This is a way to help keep the realtor honest.
Yeah.
No, they're not trying to defraud you. They just don't think of it sometimes.
Well, and keep the seller honest too, because there's a lot of times, you get those seller's disclosures that's like, for example, we bought an Airbnb in LJ, Georgia. And if you looked at the seller disclosures, it's like, oh, the house is never flooded and the septic looks amazing and all these things. And unfortunately, we still got all the inspections, and unfortunately, those still looked favorable. We close on the house, we get there, we walk in the basement, there's 2 inches of water, and it's been evident that it has flooded multiple times. And so there's only so much you could do. Property lens did not exist at that point in time. I wish it did. But, and so you never know what you're getting from a seller disclosure perspective too. So having more and more data points can save you a lot of money in the long term and can help prevent you from buying a bad home or a bad deal from an investment perspective.
Yeah, we're still not going to know everything. It's really hard to know everything. It is, but we're going to give you much more information. We're going to arm you with information. So when you walk in the door, you can ask the seller, has there been any flood issues with this house? And if they say no, then they become liable. And then you can say to the inspector, make sure you check these things out as well. Get the good inspection. Now, long term, what we want to do is have our own inspectors. Because right now, a lot of times the inspector comes on referral from your agent and they technically work for you, but they really want to get the deal done and get it back to more parties, as it were. So that's a long-term goal of ours as well, is to bring all of this data to the inspector when they're inspecting the house. Yeah,
there's an incredible amount of vertical integration you guys could do with Property Lens. And I think inspectors are one of them, service providers, home warranties. There's all kinds of stuff that you could do there. It really is a huge opportunity, as you mentioned. What's the long-term goal for you guys at Property Lens?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think this is more of our legacy, where I've already monetized out of one business. I don't need to sell a business in order to feel good about myself. I want to leave a lasting impact. Or John and I, as the founders, want to leave a lasting impact on the industry that we're serving. So I want to grow this. I want this to be a brand. I want to sponsor the Super Bowl at some point. But that's a big stretch. We gotta get the basics done first. But I want this to be something that's part of every real estate transaction in the U.S. Now, whether that's us directly or whether somebody empowers us to do that through an acquisition, I don't know what that looks like. You do what's best for your company, but at the same time, it's like, I want this to be big. And I'll stay up late for a podcast to talk about it to interested people in the real estate market because that's how committed I am to it.
That's awesome. Well, it's evident you love what you're doing and what you're building. And I'm hoping that Super Bowl is the Washington Commanders, because I would love to see them win the Super Bowl at some point in my lifetime. Because since I've been born, other than this last year, it's been a disappointment for Washington's football teams. But that's all.
Maybe the next time the Patriots make it back in here. Oh, this is a Property Lens report. It's not small.
Yeah,
you get pages in there, and that's confusing to some people. But I know that physicians love information.
We love information. We love data. Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to provide you with is before you walk in the door, know what you're getting yourself into or have an idea of what you're getting yourself into. Come armed with the questions that are going to help you make a better decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't buy a house that's flooded multiple times. That's terrible. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we got lucky. We made the repairs necessary and we were able to sell it for a profit, but it was not a great experience. I'll put it at that. Yeah, but that's awesome. Well, if you don't mind me asking, what's a typical cost for a report look like, Bob? And then to also add to that question, do you also provide, reports for commercial properties or different other asset classes within real estate?
So is $69 for one report. It's $249 for 5 and $399 for 10.
Awesome.
So it's between $40 and $60 a report, depending upon how many you want to get. It's primarily targeted to the residential real estate market because the MLS listings have very good descriptors, and we use that to help build a lot of the intelligence that we put into the report. It does work for commercial. It will give you image, damage, et cetera, et cetera. It'll pull all the permits. It'll give you the flood zones. It'll tell you the perils it's exposed to. But there isn't a really good MLS the only really good MLS for businesses won't share their data. So we can't get that data. Like what's the occupancy type? And like I can tell you what the assessor says about a building, but I can't tell you what the occupants are of that building. So it works for commercial, maybe not quite as well as it does for residential. If it's a duplex, I grew up in a 3-family house in Boston, and now they're all condos. And so it was 1 and now it's 3. And so that would be 3 reports for that location. But you could probably do with 1 and it would give you all the permit data at the street. So here's the other thing. If you buy one and you don't like what you see, just let us know and we'll give you your money back.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I'm really excited for folks to check out Property Lens. Bob, is there any way that folks can reach out to you? Is the website the best way to do that at propertylens.com, or are there some other ways folks can reach out to you?
Sure. If you want to get a report, the best way is through the website. If you want to reach me personally, you can reach me at bob@propertylens.com. I'm on the socials as My Property Lens. So if the TikTok and the InstaFace and the Facebook and all that stuff, we're all on there as My Property Lens. And on LinkedIn, also happy to connect with people. I love what we do. So if people are interested in talking about it, more than happy to talk to them about it.
Absolutely. It is a small investment to make to get a Property Lens report to potentially save so much money down the road. I think it's absolutely worth it. So excited to start using your tool for our real estate transactions as well, Bob, and really appreciate your time staying up late in Minnesota.
Alex, it's a pleasure to see you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Well, with that, it's been Bob and Alex with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast, signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.